Alan Turing was the leading force behind Britain's triumph in World War II due to his code-breaking, and became one of the most important historical figures in artificial intelligence. Despite his accomplishments, Turing was tragically abused through Britain's treatment of homosexuals, which discredited his work in AI. Alan Matheson Turing was born in 1912, June 23, in Maida Vale, England. The young boy would grow up to save millions of lives and lay out the foundation of modern computer science and AI as a brilliant mathematician and a martyr for gay rights. During World War II, Britain allied itself with 18 other countries with the purpose of keeping German, Japanese, and Italian aggression in check. The opposition against the Allies was led by Adolf Hitler, who controlled the Axis. The Battle of the Atlantic erupted immediately upon the British declaration of war against Germany for the control of Atlantic sea routes, becoming the longest continuous military campaign during the war. Germany's best chance of defeating Britain lay in winning the Battle of the Atlantic. If they managed to prevent merchant ships from transporting food, raw materials, and troops from North America, Britain would have been starved into submission, leading to their wholesale defeat in the war. The early battles in the Atlantic heavily favored the Germans. They used submarines called U-boats to sneak up on British ships and sink them with torpedoes. In 1942, German U-boats and aircrafts sank over 1,000 Allied ships in the Atlantic, losing 3 million tons of Allied shipping in merely 6 months. The supply ships were essential to the Allies because it was estimated that at least 20 supply ships needed to arrive each day in Britain for them to continue fighting the war. The government code and cipher school set up a temporary wartime station in Buckinghamshire named Bletchley Park, becoming Britain's main decryption site for Nazi codes. The codebreakers at Bletchley Park were recruited through contacts at Oxford and Cambridge, among them Alan Turing, who returned to Britain where he had been studying mathematics at Princeton University. German military communications were ciphered on the Enigma cipher machine. The cipher was based on 3 physical rotors, whose turning produced ever-changing letter substitutions, resulting in over 159 quintillion possibilities. Even if the Enigma code was broken, the way that the keys were set changed daily by the machine operators, so that the code would have to be broken over and over again. After his recruitment, Turing became involved in the war effort by leading HUD-8, a section in Bletchley Park in charge of solving encoded German naval messages during the Battle of the Atlantic. On March 18, 1940, the first bomb was delivered to Bletchley Park. The bomb was designed by Alan Turing to speed up the process of decrypting Nazi codes using cribs, familiar patterns in encrypted messages, to narrow down the possibilities of the messages. Over 200 bombs were constructed over the course of the war. At its peak, over 3,000 enemy messages were deciphered daily at Bletchley Park. By the end of the war, more than 2.5 million messages had been decoded by the bomb. The cracking of the Enigma gave Allies vital information about German positions and strategy, changing the tide of World War II. The Allies now had prior knowledge of top-secret German military commands, giving them an advantage during the war. The bomb is often referred to as a machine that sank the U-boats, allowing naval German military messages to be read by the Allied forces. The Allies were able to pinpoint the U-boats, enabling Allied convoys to be directed away from danger. The Allies were also able to ambush and sink the U-boats, clearing the Atlantic waterways for Allied use. Thanks to Turing's naval bomb, by the middle of 1943, the tide had turned in favor of the Allies, who won the Battle of the Atlantic 2 years later in 1945. After gaining control of the Atlantic waterways, the U.S. was able to freely ship more supplies to Great Britain. Keeping Britain supplied helped to prevent the Germans from taking over all of Western Europe. With increased supplies and military support from the U.S., the Allies were able to efficiently win and end the war 5 months after their victory in the Battle of the Atlantic. Turing's work in cracking the naval Enigma was estimated to have shortened World War II by at least 2 years, saving millions of lives. In 1945, Turing was awarded with an OBE in recognition of his cryptology work in Bletchley Park during the war. OBE stands for Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. In 1936, Turing developed the Turing machine. The Universal Turing machine was theoretically the first computer to solve computational numbers. It serves as a basis for every computational number in its more sophisticated forms, such as modern laptops, tablets, and smartphones. After the war, Turing went on to become deputy director of the computing laboratory at Manchester University, where he began developing a fascination in artificial intelligence. In 1950, Turing's paper, Computing Machinery and Intelligence, was published in Mind. The paper attempts to answer the question, can machines think, introducing his concept of the imitation game, which measures a machine's ability to exhibit intelligence equivalent to a human. The paper was met by skepticism by the general public and many computer scientists at the time. Turing's propositions contradicted widely held assumptions about the uniqueness of human abilities. Despite the rebuke he received, Turing remained stubborn in his position that machines could think. In January 1952, Turing initiated a brief romantic relationship with a man named Arnold Murray. In Turing's lifetime, being gay was illegal and punishable by law. The Buggery Act was signed into English law in 1553. The text of the act described buggery as a detestable vice, punishable by death whether committed with mankind or beast. Homosexuality was viewed as perverse by society, being an offense so dark in nature that the very mention of it is a disgrace to human nature. A while after their relationship, Murray returned to Turing's home with a friend and broke into it. When Turing reported the break-in, he was forced to explain how he knew the suspect. Turing was arrested on February 7, 1952 under the Criminal Law Amendment Act, passed in 1885, making any male homosexual act illegal, meaning that even acts committed in private could be prosecuted. The convicted were subjected to either imprisonment or chemical castration, a medical procedure that killed a man's sexual drive. On March 31, 1952, Turing attended trial and pleaded guilty in the charges in the belief that he hadn't done anything wrong. The court charged Turing guilty of acts of gross indecency. Turing chose chemical castration as an alternative to jail time. Chemical castration is a procedure that lowers male hormones, reducing a man's sexual desire. Turing was forced to go through a year of organotherapy after the procedure, succumbing him into depression. After Turing's arrest, his security clearance was lifted, barring him from his work for the British government. Known homosexuals were ineligible for security clearance, and he was deemed as a security risk. Not only were homosexuals criminalized, they were also viewed negatively by society. Even Turing's own brother described Turing's homosexuality as disgusting and disreputable proclivities. Turing's position on artificial intelligence was already seen as questionable by the public. After his arrest, his credibility was questioned even further. In a letter written to a friend, Turing had admitted his fear that his sexual orientation would be used to discredit his work. Turing believes machines think. Turing lies with men, therefore machines do not think. Yours in distress, Alan. In 1954, June 8th, Turing committed suicide by ingesting an apple laced with cyanide 16 days before his 42nd birthday. Turing's legacy lives on as the pioneer of modern computer science, wartime hero, and a gay icon. More than 50 years after his death, the British government revealed the full extent of Turing's contributions during the war. The legacy he left and gay rights pushed LGBT activist groups and thousands of people in England to sign a petition pressuring the British Parliament into granting Alan Turing a pardon. On December 24, 2013, Turing was granted a royal pardon by Queen Elizabeth II.
I think that is excellent news that this royal prerogative mercy, which is very rarely granted, has been granted in this very special case. I'd be delighted to come and visit his constituency, to go to Bletchley Park. One of my wife's family worked there during the war and speaks incredibly highly about what Alan Turing was like and what he was like to work with. And there's no doubt, the historians can argue about the degree, but there's absolutely no doubt the work that was done in his constituency was absolutely vital in winning the war.